I'm Vernia Matson, 36 years old, and if you'd asked me 6 months ago whether I believed a relationship could unravel over a single sentence, I would have laughed. Relationships don't explode overnight. They erode in silence, one small wound at a time, until one ordinary evening becomes the moment you realize the person beside you has quietly become a stranger. Looking back now, I can see every warning sign I ignored. At the time, I called it stress. I called it a rough patch. I kept convincing myself that if I loved Graham enough, we'd find our way back. For the first 6.5 years, we had what most people would call a good life. We met at a supply chain conference in Dallas after getting trapped in a painfully boring keynote speech. We escaped to the coffee station together, laughed about the stale hotel coffee, and spent the rest of the afternoon talking instead of networking. Graham worked in event planning back then. He was funny, ambitious, and charming in a way that made everyone around him feel comfortable. 18 months later, we moved into a house in the Chicago suburbs and started building the future we'd talked about during those endless phone calls. Life settled into a rhythm that felt almost effortless. We took road trips to Nashville and Austin. We spent a week hiking through Colorado, arguing over which trails were worth the climb. Friday nights usually meant trying some new restaurant Graham found online, while Sundays belonged to movies on the couch and grocery shopping together. Nothing extraordinary, just the kind of ordinary happiness you don't appreciate until it's gone. Then, about 5 months ago, something shifted. Not dramatically, quietly. Graham started correcting me in front of people. "No, Vernia, that's Carter, not Carl. We went to Mexico, remember? Not Miami. You always mix those stories up." Each correction was tiny, almost harmless on its own, but together they made me feel smaller every week. Then came Monica. She was Graham's ex-girlfriend, a real estate agent who drove an expensive white Audi and somehow managed to make every conversation sound like a sales pitch. Twice divorced before turning 35, she seemed to collect failed relationships the way some people collected vacation magnets. Somehow, after reconnecting with Graham, she became his closest confidant. Suddenly, Graham had new opinions. He deserved more appreciation. Relationships were supposed to be 50-50 emotionally. I wasn't making enough effort. I wasn't attentive enough. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks managing supply chain logistics for a freight company. The mortgage came from my paycheck. I'd paid off Graham's student loans the previous year. His SUV was financed under my name because his credit had never fully recovered from years of reckless spending before we met. I wasn't perfect, but I showed up every single day. Instead of arguing, I convinced myself he was simply stressed. Maybe quitting his previous job had shaken his confidence. Maybe he just needed time. I waited. Things only got worse. 3 months earlier, Graham had quit another event planning position, complaining that his manager micromanaged everything. Before that, he'd left a nonprofit because the workload was emotionally draining. Before that, another company with another excuse. Now, he'd been unemployed for months. His mornings consisted of yoga classes, expensive brunches with Monica, and scrolling through social media while I coordinated freight shipments stretching from Cleveland to Atlanta. I never pressured him. I kept paying every bill. I believed he'd eventually find his footing. Instead, he found new reasons to resent me. About 2 months before everything collapsed, the affection disappeared. Whenever I reached for his hand in bed, he'd quietly pull away. "I'm exhausted. I've got a headache. Can we just sleep tonight?" At first, I accepted it. Not every night needed romance. Then it became every night. Soon, he'd flinch whenever my fingers brushed his shoulder. Eventually, he started sleeping on the opposite edge of the mattress, leaving an invisible ocean between us. The distance wasn't just physical anymore. It filled the entire house. Last Tuesday night finally broke whatever hope I still had. I was lying in bed reading emails on my phone while Graham finished washing his face in the bathroom. He climbed into bed without saying goodnight, turned his back toward me, and pulled the blanket around himself. I set my phone on the nightstand, smiled to myself. Maybe tonight would be different. I leaned over, intending to kiss his cheek. The instant my fingertips touched his shoulder, he jerked away as though I'd burned him. "Don't touch me." His voice was cold enough to freeze the room. I blinked. "What?" I said, "Don't touch me." He still wasn't looking at me. I have too much self-respect. For several seconds, I couldn't even process what I'd heard. "I was just trying to kiss you goodnight." He slowly turned toward me. His face looked strangely calm, almost rehearsed. "I don't care what you were trying to do. My body, my choice. And I choose not to be touched by someone who doesn't appreciate me." I stared at him. "Someone who doesn't appreciate you?" "Exactly. You think paying bills is love. You think money replaces emotional connection. You don't see me anymore, Vernia." For a moment, I honestly wondered if I was listening to Graham or Monica speaking through him. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "You haven't worked in 5 months. I've supported both of us without complaining. I paid off your loans. I've never once held that over your head." His expression hardened instantly. "There you go again. Everything comes back to money." "No." I met his eyes without raising my voice. "Everything comes back to responsibility." His jaw tightened. "I deserve better." I slowly stood beside the bed. "So do I." Silence settled between us, heavy, uncomfortable. Then Graham pointed toward the bedroom door. "Leave." I frowned. "What?" "I don't want you sleeping in here. I don't want you anywhere near me tonight." For a long moment, I simply looked at him. 7 years. 7 years together. And he was throwing me out of my own bedroom because I'd tried to kiss him. I picked up my pillow. "Fine." Then I paused at the doorway, without anger, without shouting, without tears. "I hope your self-respect helps with the mortgage." I closed the bedroom door quietly behind me. The guest room felt colder than I remembered. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while the house creaked around me. Somewhere down the hallway, I heard Graham brushing his teeth, humming softly, completely unbothered by what had just happened. That was when something inside me finally stopped breaking and started hardening. For 5 months, I'd been defending myself against accusations I didn't deserve, trying harder, apologizing first, making excuses for behavior that kept getting worse. No more. Around midnight, I picked up my phone and texted my best friend, Carter. "You free tomorrow? Need a drink." His reply arrived less than a minute later. "Anytime. Everything okay?" I looked toward the closed bedroom door, then typed 4 words. "Depends who you ask." As I set my phone down, I made one silent promise to myself. If Graham wanted to make self-respect the new rule in our relationship, I was finally ready to play by it too. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I'd slept well, because I hadn't slept at all. For years, my mornings had begun the same way. Shower, coffee, check freight reports before heading to the office. That routine gave me stability, something predictable when everything else felt uncertain. This morning was different. I used the guest bathroom without making a sound. When I walked downstairs, Graham was already standing in the kitchen, wearing black yoga pants and one of my oversized sweatshirts he'd claimed months earlier. His phone occupied all of his attention. "Morning," I said. Nothing. He kept scrolling. I poured myself coffee. "We doing the silent treatment now?" "I don't have anything to say." His answer was flat, emotionless. I took a slow sip before nodding. "That's fine." "I'm not coming home after work tonight." That finally got his attention. His eyes lifted from the screen. What do you mean? I've got plans. What plans? Poker night at Carter's. His eyebrows drew together. On a Thursday? Apparently. Carter moved it because Owen's traveling this weekend. The concern in Graham's face would have looked sweet if I hadn't recognized what it really was: control. He hadn't spoken to me for 5 straight minutes, yet suddenly he wanted a full explanation of my evening. You should have told me before making plans. I just did. That's not how relationships work, Vernia. I smiled. No? You told me to get out of our bedroom because I tried to kiss you. You said you wanted space. I'm respecting that. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Before he could recover, I grabbed my keys. Have a good day. The front door shut behind me before he found another argument. Work became my refuge. 3 delayed shipments, 1 furious client, a dispatcher calling in sick. Normally, all that would have exhausted me. Instead, every logistical problem felt easier than figuring out my relationship. Around lunchtime, Carter texted. Everything still on? Definitely. Good, bring cash. I'm taking everybody's money tonight. For the first time all week, I smiled. By 6 that evening, I was sitting around Carter's poker table. The familiar group was already there. Carter, Owen, Brendan. People I'd trusted for years. One look at me was enough. You look terrible, Carter said. I've looked better. Graham? I nodded once. Nobody asked another question. Instead, Brendan slid me a stack of poker chips. Take my money. It'll make you feel better. Owen didn't even glance up. That assumes she can beat Carter. I've beaten him before. Twice. 3 times, Carter corrected. You still remember? I remember every dollar. The room filled with laughter. For 2 hours, I almost forgot everything waiting back home. Then someone knocked on the condo door. Carter frowned. Expecting anyone? No. He opened it. My stomach sank. Graham walked inside. Monica followed immediately behind him, both smiling, neither invited. Oh, don't stop because of us, Monica said sweetly. We were just nearby. Carter looked toward me. I gave him the smallest shake of my head. He understood immediately. Too polite to throw them out, too uncomfortable to welcome them. Sure. Come in. They settled onto the couch behind the poker table. Within minutes, Monica started commenting on Carter's condo. What do these units cost? You own or rent? Property values downtown have exploded. Classic Monica. Every conversation eventually became a transaction. We tried ignoring them. It lasted less than 10 minutes. Graham leaned forward. So, he smiled toward everyone, don't let Vernia fool you. She usually loses half her paycheck at poker. The room went silent. Brendan stared into his drink. Carter slowly dealt another card. I looked directly at Graham. If I lose, it's my money. His smile twitched. Oh, relax. I'm joking. Funny. Monica laughed louder than necessary. Graham's just keeping you humble. I ignored her, focused on my cards. For another 20 minutes, they kept trying. Little comments, tiny jabs, every one aimed at making me look smaller. Finally, Graham spoke again, while nearly $300 sat in the middle of the table. You should probably fold. Strategy isn't exactly your strength. Before I could answer, Owen calmly looked up. Actually, Vernia has the second highest win percentage here. Graham blinked. What? We keep statistics, Owen shrugged. She's won just over $4,000 in 2 years. Brendan groaned dramatically. Why would you tell them that? Now I look terrible. It's data, Owen returned to his cards. Monica crossed her arms. Money isn't everything. In poker, Owen replied without expression, it's literally the point. Carter burst into laughter. Even I couldn't help smiling. For the first time all evening, Graham looked embarrassed. He'd expected everyone to laugh with him. Instead, they defended me. I slowly placed my cards face down, pushed my chair back. I'm done. Carter looked surprised. You sure? Yeah. I picked up my jacket. Graham stood immediately. Wait! You're leaving? Yes. But why? I looked around the table, then back at him. Because I don't stay where I'm treated without respect. The words hit him harder than shouting ever could. His face changed instantly. Confusion, then panic. Vernia, I didn't mean, but I was already walking toward the door. Behind me, I heard Monica trying to recover the moment. You guys are being dramatic. Nobody answered her. The elevator doors closed. My phone vibrated before I reached the parking garage. Graham calling. Decline. 30 seconds later, again. Decline. Then Monica texted. I deleted it without opening the message. Driving home, I realized something important. He hadn't followed me because he loved me. He followed me because he'd lost control of the conversation. That terrified him. When I walked into the house around 10 o'clock, Graham was already waiting, arms folded, expression tight. There you are. You embarrassed me. I set my keys on the table. I embarrassed you? You walked out. In front of everyone. You made me look ridiculous. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You came to a private poker night without an invitation. You spent an hour trying to humiliate me. And somehow I'm the problem? I was trying to spend time with you. No. I met his eyes calmly. You were trying to impress Monica. His expression faltered. I wasn't. You've changed. So have you. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I picked up my overnight bag from beside the stairs. I'm sleeping in the guest room again. You can't just walk away every time. I paused halfway up the staircase, then repeated the same sentence he'd used against me less than 24 hours earlier. Don't ask me. I have self-respect. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, Graham had absolutely nothing to say. The silence that followed lasted 2 days. Not peaceful silence, the kind that hangs over a house after a tornado, when everything is still standing, but nothing feels livable anymore. Graham left early every morning without saying goodbye. Sometimes he'd spend the afternoon with Monica. Sometimes he'd disappear completely until after dark. I stopped asking where he was. He stopped pretending it mattered. Oddly enough, the distance made me think more clearly than I had in months. I wasn't angry anymore. I was exhausted. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang while I was reviewing shipping schedules. Caroline, Graham's mother. Seeing her name appear was enough to make me sigh. I answered anyway. Hello, Caroline. Vernia. Her tone carried its usual judgment. Graham called me. I figured. He's devastated. I almost laughed. Really? You're emotionally unavailable. You're sleeping in another room. You've become cold. I leaned back in my office chair. For months, your son has treated me like I don't belong in my own home. He threw me out of our bedroom. He publicly humiliated me. He quit working. I've paid every bill. Caroline interrupted immediately. Money isn't everything. No, it isn't. But respect is. She clicked her tongue. You've changed. So has Graham. Relationships require sacrifice. I've sacrificed enough. There was a long pause. Finally, she spoke again. If you keep behaving like this, you're going to lose him. I stared out the office window toward Lake Michigan, then answered quietly, "Maybe I've already lost him." I ended the call before she could respond. That evening, I arrived home to complete silence. No television, no music, just an empty house. For the first time in months, it felt peaceful. I cooked dinner for myself, a simple grilled chicken salad. No criticism, no passive-aggressive comments, no walking on eggshells. I had almost finished eating when my phone buzzed. A message from Carter. "Barbecue Saturday at Monica's. Everybody's invited." I stared at the screen. Normally I'd refuse. Instead, I typed back, "I'll be there." Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I simply wanted confirmation that what I was seeing wasn't all in my head. Saturday afternoon arrived bright and humid. I drove separately. When I pulled into Monica's driveway, Carter waved me over near the grill. "Thought you might bail." I almost did. Owen handed me a soda. "You ready?" "For what?" He looked toward the house. "Graham." I followed his gaze. 20 minutes later, Graham walked into the backyard, Monica beside him, Caroline trailing only a few steps behind. Of course she'd come too. The three of them looked less like guests and more like a committee. Brendan leaned over. "I've got $50 as somebody starts a fight." "I don't gamble against inevitability." He laughed. For the first hour, everything stayed surprisingly civil. People ate, kids splashed in the pool, music played quietly through outdoor speakers. Then Monica decided she wanted everyone's attention. "Vernia!" she called loudly from across the yard. "Can you help Graham carry the serving dishes?" Half the party turned to look at me. It wasn't a request, it was an order. Public, deliberate, designed to see whether I'd immediately obey. I smiled politely. "No thanks." The backyard fell completely silent. Monica blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm good." "Graham needs help." "He has 2 hands." "So do you." "I'm sure you'll figure it out." Several people exchanged uncomfortable looks. Graham's cheeks flushed crimson. "Vernia." "Don't make a scene." I took another sip of my drink. "I'm not." "You are." Caroline stepped forward exactly as I'd expected. Her finger pointed straight at me. "You will not disrespect these women." I slowly stood, handed my drink to Carter, then faced her. "Actually, I'll speak however I choose. This isn't your house. And you aren't my mother." A hush swept across the backyard. Even the children stopped shouting. Caroline's mouth hung open. Graham looked horrified. "You're embarrassing me," he whispered. I met his eyes. "No, I'm refusing to embarrass myself." I picked up my car keys. "Enjoy the party." Nobody tried stopping me. As I walked toward my car, I heard Monica calling after me. Then Graham. Then Caroline. I never turned around. Halfway home, my phone started vibrating. Graham. Decline. Again. Decline. A text followed. "Why are you acting like this?" Another. "Can we please just talk?" I smiled sadly. 5 months earlier, I would have answered immediately. Now? I drove in complete silence. When I arrived home, there was another handwritten note waiting on the kitchen counter. "I'm staying at Monica's tonight. We both need space." I crumpled it into the trash. Space. That word had become everyone's favorite excuse. Monday morning, I called the number Carter had given me months before. "Janet Reynolds, Family Law." "I'd like to schedule a consultation." Wednesday afternoon, I sat across from Janet in her downtown office overlooking Lake Michigan. She listened carefully while I told her everything. The bedroom, the humiliation, the financial imbalance, the manipulation, the public scenes. She never interrupted, only took notes. Finally, she closed her folder. "Does Graham currently have a job?" No. Children? No. Whose name is on the vehicles? Mine. The house? Joint ownership. But I paid the down payment. She nodded. This is manageable. Those 3 words landed like a weight lifting from my shoulders. Manageable. For months, I'd convinced myself my entire life was collapsing. To Janet, it was simply another case. What happens next? I asked. You prepare. Quietly. Documents. Accounts. Assets. And when you're ready, you stop reacting emotionally. You start acting strategically. I left her office carrying a folder instead of fear. For the first time in months, I wasn't wondering how to save the relationship. I was learning how to save myself. As I pulled into my driveway that evening, Graham was sitting alone on the front porch. He stood the moment he saw me. Where were you? I looked at him calmly, then repeated the sentence that had slowly become the turning point of everything. Don't ask me. I have self-respect. His face fell. Not because of the words, because, for the first time, he realized I actually meant them.